Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is the newest addition to the Dan Tortora broadcast media and Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora family. And for that, I'm joined with Brendan Murphy here on the broadcast of Designated Diamonds, folks. Designated Diamonds are baseball-centric segment inside of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora that spun into its own broadcast. And I'm very excited to have Brendan here with me. We met through our alma mater of Marywood University and through my first kid, MU Courtside, that Brendan Murphy was working on here for the last few years. He let me come back and sit in and be a part of it. And so now it's paying it forward, returning the favor with Designated Diamonds. Brendan, how are we doing?
We're doing good, Dan. It's been a nice day. It's a great Sunday. Watched a lot of football today. Made a little bit of money with my bets, but we're gonna talk some baseball now. It's everybody that knows me knows baseball is I live and breathe baseball. So it's gonna be a lot of fun for the next little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk baseball here as we are pushing closer and closer to the postseason. And this season started off with, when you look at the state of New York, the season began with Mets fans saying, okay, we're starting hot. We've done that for a couple of years, and eventually we dip and we fall off. And then it goes back to what normal feels like for Mets fans. It feels good, and then it starts to fade away. And then you have Jacob deGrom in there. He's doing his thing. He's a pitcher who's electrifying. He can also hit the ball. And so there's all these positives. And then you fast forward to now, with this man had an ERA that was way low, under 1. And now we're looking at the fact that, this season, once again, for Mets fans, seemingly feels like it's following that really hot start, that beautiful feeling, that kind of that breath of fresh air, that sigh of relief. And now the Mets, as we're talking, are in the middle of the National League East. You're a Mets fan, so bring me into it. Starting the season with the entire country looking at Jacob deGrom. Literally, even people that weren't even baseball fans knew his name and were paying attention to him. So paint me the picture from a Mets fan's point of view of how the season started and where we are.
Well, from a Mets fan's perspective, I think you have to go back to November when longtime Mets fan and multi-billionaire Steve Cohen bought the team from the Wilpons. Thank God. Wilpons, arguably the worst owners in baseball. And he came in, spent some money. We got Francisco Lindor, made a couple of moves in the offseason in free agency. Didn't get any of the big three between Springer, Real Muto, and Bauer. Real Muto was probably the guy that made the most sense. Springer opted to go to Toronto. He's had an okay season with them, but hasn't been the George Springer that we all knew in Houston. And then Trevor Bauer, that we all know what a mess that's turned into. So Mets kind of dodged a bullet with that one. But, beginning of the season, they start off playing okay baseball. Lindor was struggling a bit. They weren't hitting that well, but the pitching was doing amazing things. You had 3 guys that could have easily been all-stars. You had deGrom, who was an all-star, Taijuan Walker, who also was an all-star, and then the guy that everybody doesn't talk about, that nobody talks about right now, is Marcus Stroman, who very quietly has had a very good year with an ERA below 3. He's tied for the team lead in wins, and he's just been a leader and a model of consistency throughout the season for them. Had a little bit of a rough patch in the beginning of August, but has still pitched very well for the Mets all season long. But the key for them was pitching, and the pitching carried them in the first half. They had an outstanding May where everybody was pitching well, from deGrom to Walker to Stroman. David Peterson, before he got hurt, was pitching well. They had contributions from a lot of different guys, and they were playing well. Then June comes around. They start playing right around 500 ball. They took the division lead right into the All-Star break and into the trade deadline, and then things started to kind of fall apart. And it's not necessarily through any fault of their own. They went out and made a trade for Rich Hill. They went out and made a trade for Javier Baez, who has been a spark plug as long as he's been in the lineup. But August hits, Baez gets hurt. Lindor's still hurt. They can't hit to save their lives. They had an abysmal month of August. They had a stretch where they had to go out west and play the Giants and the Dodgers in 13 consecutive games. They went 2-11 in that stretch of games, and that really opened the door for the Braves and the Phillies to make a move and leapfrog the Mets in the division. Now they're sitting in third place. I don't really know what to expect going forward. I mean, the series with the Yankees has been okay, but I don't really know what to expect. They still got a couple of tough games left. They got a tough road to finish the season. I believe they still have the Nationals one more time. They have the Phillies one more time. They got to go to Milwaukee. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets where they were, and it's kind of funny how people are putting up a bunch of those side by sides this past year of how it started and how it's going. And the how it started is I would imagine a beautiful picture of Jacob deGrom, and how it's going is the fact that this team is now kind of shaking their heads under 500, close to the 500 equator line, but still below it as it stands right now, and they would be out of the wild card at this point, which I mean, you go from being in a position where you're leading the NL East, and the NL East was, I mean, it's been closely contested all season. We have seen the facts that the Mets have been able to stave off when deGrom was playing. They were able to do enough to put themselves in a position where they could keep certain teams at bay, like the Phillies and the Braves, and they would be up by 5 games or whatever it may be, 4 games. They kept a little bit of cushion, a game here and there, but now it's different. Now, at the time we're talking, the Braves are in first. The Phillies are a few games behind that, then the Mets. Did you see this happening, and is this all because deGrom's not there, or do you put it somewhere else?
I think deGrom not being there is a part of it, but at the same time, I mean, you look at that rotation, and they went out and got depth in the offseason, and they got depth at the trade deadline. They brought in Rich Hill, a guy who was brought in to eat innings. I mean, they've had a godsend this year in Tyler McGill, who was not on anybody's prospect radar, and he's very quietly pitched very, very well. And I'm obviously not comparing him to Jacob deGrom, but his poise on the mound, the way he's gone about his business, even the way he looks on the mound pitching and how he's pitched so far in his pitch mix, it's very similar to a rookie year Jacob deGrom. Now, I am by no means saying that Tyler McGill is going to be the next Jacob deGrom. He's got good stuff. He's pitched very well for the Mets this year. I'm not saying that at all. But he's been really, really good for them this year, and he's a guy who's kind of kept that rotation afloat. I mean, once deGrom went down, they started to have to use some guys from AAA. I think Yency Diaz had to start a game. You might be asking yourself, who the heck is Yency Diaz? Exactly. So they were struggling for a bit with pitching, but now they've got a solid rotation with Rich Hill. They've got Stroman and Walker, who Walker's kind of fallen off a bit in the second half, but he's also pitched more innings than he has in his entire career, as has Tyler McGill.
Yeah.
And then you got Carlos Carrasco, and he's a guy who missed all the first half, came back in August, hasn't pitched that well, mostly been the first inning in almost every start that he's had, that he's been horrendous, but he's pitched well for the most part. So they got a solid rotation going right now. I don't even know who the odd man out would be when and if deGrom comes back at the end of the year. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But I think the real key was when they went out west and they played the Dodgers and the Giants. You knew they were going to struggle through that stretch because they're not on the same tier as those two teams. I mean, the Dodgers and Giants are far and away the two best teams in baseball, and we'll talk about the Giants later because they're a team that shocked everybody this year. Nobody understands how they're as good as they are. But those 2 series, those 4 series, really might have put the nail in the coffin of the Mets season. I mean, going 2-11 in that 13-game stretch, that's not good.
Yeah, and seeing the Mets, falter here. I mean, when they went into the All-Star break, obviously people were riding the high of DeGrom, and at the same time, you get to the home run derby, and Pete Alonso became a spark for this team. I mean, again, another guy on the Mets that the nation was looking at, the nation was paying attention to. And I mean, what can you say what Pete Alonso has been to this team? Because I think, I mean, for me this year, it seemed like whether you were a Mets fan or not, again, you knew of these players. And if you didn't know them, then you had no choice. I mean, everywhere I went, somebody was talking about DeGrom. And then just watching the, home run after home run by Pete Alonso, it was insane. I think in the first 2 rounds, he had crossed 50. And I think he had 72 on the night or something like that, around that number.
Something crazy like that.
Yeah.
I think he had like 32 in the first round.
Yeah, he had 30 plus. Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, when, Pete Alonso, what has he meant to this team? And I mean, obviously they're not where they want to be right now, but being a Mets fan, having Pete Alonso on this squad and having Jacob DeGrom on the squad, where does this stack up with teams of the past that maybe commanded attention?
Well, I mean, for me, the first thing, there's 2 teams that I really look back at least during my lifetime, that stood above the rest. And that was 2006 with David Wright, Carlos Beltran, Jose Reyes, all those great superstars that we had. One good year, unfortunately, but, they had the collapse of 2007 and 2008, couldn't get to the postseason, whatever. And then 2015 when they went to the World Series. Now, a good friend of mine who I had on my podcast, which I haven't had the time to really do it anymore, so I haven't done it in a while. But so my buddy Trevor, who is probably somebody I could talk baseball with all day, has said for years that 2015 World Series, the Royals were the worst World Series championship team in the last decade. And I don't disagree with him. They really weren't that good. And realistically, neither were the Mets.
Yeah.
I mean, they had, outside of that pitching staff, they had no business being there. They didn't exactly have a lot of good, notable hitters other than David Wright. And David Wright was coming back from spinal stenosis and played 35 games all in the regular season. And you had Yoenis Cespedes, who went on a tear for 2 months, and then Daniel Murphy, who became Babe Ruth for a week in Chicago. And then they kind of all fell flat on their face in the World Series. I'm still hurt by that. I still can't get over that, even 6 years later.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But this year's team, honestly, I think is better than that 2015 team outside of the pitching staff. I mean, you still got DeGrom. Stroman's a good option. Walker, Rich Hill, Carrasco. It's a well-balanced rotation. And then you've got guys like Pete Alonso. You've got guys like Francisco Lindor. You mentioned Alonso specifically, and I want to go over a couple of numbers real quick because I had all these jotted down just from this year. Now, everybody's talking about how Pete Alonso's not exactly having a great season, but he quietly is having a really good year. Everyone expects him to hit, they say he's going to hit 53 home runs again. It's not going to happen every year. Look at Aaron Judge. Look what he did after he hit 52 home runs his rookie year. He got hurt. Now, Alonso didn't get hurt last year, but he didn't have the best year of his career for sure. But 264 batting average, that's higher than it was in 2019. 342 on base, a little bit lower. He's not walking quite as much. 860 OPS, which is a really good number. 32 home runs, 85 RBI. But the number that stood out to me was strikeout percentage. He's striking out only 20.3% of the time, compared to 26% of the time in 2019 and 25 in 2020. So he's not striking out as much, putting the ball in play more. He's getting more hits. He's delivering clutch hits when they need it.
Yeah.
Hitting with runners in scoring position, he's struggling with that. But then again, so is the entire team. So you can't really blame just Alonso for that. But he's quietly had a really good year. People really forget about him.
Yeah, and so I mean, we look at this year's team, and do you think they have enough? I mean, at the point that we're at right now, like I said, they're out of this thing. They're out of the lead in the division that they held for the majority of the season. They don't have that in the NL East, and they're not in the wild card. Do you think they'll have enough? And can DeGrom get back quick enough?
Well, the short answer is no. I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible.
Yeah.
Considering I watch their games every night. Even day games especially, because when I'm sitting in the golf shop, we got a TV on and I can throw the Mets game on.
Yeah.
That's what I usually do Sunday afternoons, but now that the NFL season has started, it's the Jet game. But still, like I'll be watching their games every day and just watching how this team plays. And don't get me wrong, this team's got a lot of fight. Like, they're a resilient bunch. They're never out of a game because you never know what's going to happen. But they really hit a wall in the month of August that they dug them into a hole that might have been too big to climb out of. But, I mean, there's a couple of other points I wanted to make, at least while we're talking about the Mets here.
Yeah.
And I think one reason for their struggles this year has been Michael Conforto, who in a contract year has struggled mightily. But in the last month, he's hitting almost 300. But for the year, 226, 12 home runs, 726 OPS. All right. You might look at those numbers and say, yeah, he's not having a good year. Then I hadn't done this with him, believe it or not. Then I went on Baseball Savant, which is an unbelievable website for the underlying numbers. So if you're a fantasy baseball player or just a baseball fan, you want to find out who's actually good and who's actually not, Baseball Savant is a really good website for that. So I'm looking at his expected batting average.
Yeah.
248. All right. It's not that bad. He's got a 251 lifetime batting average. Okay, so they expect him to be hitting better than that.
Yeah.
22% K rate this year, right around his career average. I'm watching the game, I'm thinking he's striking out a lot, but he really isn't. He's not striking out any more than normal. His walk rate, 12.7%. That's up from 10.3% last year, where he really had a good year, and it's slightly above his career average at 12%. He's hitting the ball hard, too. 42.4% hard hit rate, 36.6% last year, 40.5% for his career. He's got significantly more barrels this year than last. And he's a guy that, while he has struggled, the underlying numbers say he should be better. And at this point in the year, he's starting to adjust to that. And the numbers are starting to even out a little bit more. So he's a guy that, as much as he struggled, he's starting to turn a corner, and the underlying numbers tell you he should be better, and he's starting to fill out those numbers.
Yeah, so I mean, you're seeing some more positives come in, and what you're obviously paying attention to is the fact that there are things that are happening for this Mets team future-wise. Where do you see them going? Whether or not this year ends up being playoff bound, where are these Mets as we step forward?
I mean, going forward, they're going to have a lot of questions in the offseason. They traded for Javi Baez. He's a free agent. Michael Conforto is a free agent. Marcus Stroman is a free agent. They got a lot of question marks. And I'm looking at these guys and looking around the field and saying, I was talking to my dad the other night about Javi, and I'm saying flat out, I think I want to keep him. And it's not so much because He's playing well. I just like his personality on the field. Like, I mean, I liked him when he was in Chicago and everything. I thought he was an exciting player to watch. He does all these crazy things. He swings out of his shoes. He strikes out a million times. Always going to lead the league in strikeouts. But when he hits the ball, it goes a mile. So I was looking at his numbers for the in the month he's been with the Mets too. 299 average, 359 on base, 948 OPS, 158 OPS plus. Mind you, league average is 100. 8 home runs, 16 RBIs. I think it was 25 runs scored. I didn't write that down, but I remember the number.
Yeah.
But that's just since coming to the Mets. And to think he missed 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks when he first got here. So I like Javi a lot. Conforto, I don't know what he's going to see on the open market, so maybe you bring him back with a qualifying offer, and that's probably going to be close to $20 million this year. If he takes it, great. You bring him back on a $20 million contract. If he doesn't, you'll get a draft pick compensation for him, and I think both sides would be happy. He's the type of guy that I could see maybe a change of scenery would be beneficial for him, but
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, he's played well in New York before. He thrived during the postseason run in 2015. I don't see why he couldn't be successful in New York, but I don't know what they're going to do there. Steve Cohen's got a lot of money, and he won't be afraid to use it. Stroman's another guy that's a question mark. Are they going to re-sign him? I would like them to. Shore up the rotation. There's not a ton of great pitchers on the market this offseason. There's a lot of great infielders on the market. That's why I feel like Baez might be a great option to come back on a short-term 1 or 2 year deal because Correa is a free agent. Seager's a free agent. Baez is a free agent. Lindor would have been a free agent. I believe Xander Bogaerts is a free agent. There's so many middle infielders that are free agents that are going to command a lot of money. And then even going to the corners, Chris Bryant, he's a free agent. Yeah. There's a lot of good players on the market this offseason. So, I mean, Steve Cohen could just open up the checkbook and give whoever the GM is going to be. That's actually another thing I want to mention before we move on. But open up the checkbook and say, all right, here's my list of guys I want. Go get them. But front office is going to be a problem. That's the first thing they need to figure out is who's going to be running the team. Because Sandy Alderson right now went from being just the president of baseball operations, where he wasn't going to be doing anything, to president of baseball ops, or now, all right, he's going to be overseeing baseball. And now he's the general manager because we had our first general manager that he hired get hit with sexual misconduct things in the offseason within 2 weeks after they hired him. That was a mess. And now Zach Scott gets hit with a DUI, so now he's out. I don't know what they're going to do. There were a couple of names I would have liked. I mean, you got Eric Neander's a great executive with the Rays. You got Theo Epstein, who's in the commissioner's office right now. I don't know what the heck they're going to do in the front office, but that's square one. That's the first project for the offseason. Before they do that, before they sign anybody, that's what they have to do first.
Yeah, so I mean, the Mets obviously have a lot of things to figure out and take care of as they step forward. As we are here, Designated Diamonds is the name of the show. Those Designated Diamonds, Brendan Murphy, myself, Dan Tortora, here with you, a product of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and Dan Tortora Broadcast Media from inside of the Cafe Cubal studios as we discuss the world of baseball and here the 2021 season. One of the guys, before we go to the other team in New York, I want to go here for a second. Mike Trout, the highest paid player in baseball, his astronomical contract, and yet since May 17th, when he had a calf issue that started this questionable year, this year of sitting and waiting and wondering and hoping. We talk about DeGrom and hoping that he comes back, but the Mike Trout saga has left fans of baseball, not just fans of the Angels, but fans of baseball, waiting very impatiently and looking at the fact that, the Angels could say, hey, you know what? Why don't you just pack it in? They're under 500. They're not in a place right now where they're going to be making the playoffs. What's your take on the Mike Trout saga, really, to stick with that word, that their star center fielder and the highest paid player in baseball and highest paid player by contract ever has had a nagging calf issue since back in May that's made us sit here and just hurry up and wait, so to speak?
I actually believe it was an ankle injury. I believe it. I'm pretty sure he sprained his ankle. It was a really bad sprain, from what I can recall, back in May. They figured he was going to be out until late July, early August.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably what the Angels were thinking. They went on a big losing streak once he got hurt. Even with Shohei Ohtani doing his thing and dominating baseball on the mound and at the plate, they were out of it. The pitching didn't hold up. I mean, they had a bright spot in Patrick Sandoval, who emerged this year pretty much out of nowhere. And then Anthony Rendon was on and off the IL all year, and now he's out for the year. I think they're kind of just packing it in with Mike Trout for the year because they're out of it. They know they're not going to make the playoffs. So it's really not worth bringing him back. So just let him have the off season, be like fully recover, and then go in the next year and hope for the best. But the funniest note of all, though, will be the fact that for the first time in his career, he will not get a vote for the MVP. He will not finish in the top 5 for the MVP. Sorry, for the first time in his career.
Yeah. And the thing is, this season just kind of a wash. I mean, I remember going into the season, just really, how early on it was hearing this. When's he going to come back? I mean, it's something that has just been the Achilles heel of baseball this season. The waiting of and the hoping to see him and to watch him, just because of the fact that there's certain players in this country that people just root for and they get excited to watch. DeGrom, was becoming one of those players this year. Obviously, Shohei, you brought him up. Mike Trout, for sure. And, being in the position that we're in right now, it feels like baseball lost something by not having him around. But at the same time, like you said, you don't want to bring him back. I mean, sports, it doesn't matter what sport you play. When they try to rush somebody back, they might be okay for a week or two, and then they're out again, and now it's longer. And it really doesn't help out. We've seen it with CMC. We've seen it with Julio Jones. You could see it with bringing pitchers back too early and, with their arms and whatnot. So, really, you could go throughout history and name any sport and sit on the fact that, when you're 90%, 70%, 83%, eventually, potentially, these women go back out again. And it hurts even more the second time because you waited so long to see them. Or you just, waited a week or two thinking, okay, this isn't a big deal. And it ends up being a bigger deal and it ends up taking them longer. So I think, the biggest thing at this point with the Angels being under 500 and being in 4th place in the AL West behind the Astros, the Mariners, and the Athletics, and only in front of the Rangers, that time where you're at right now and where your season's at right now, you're 13 and a half games back at the time we're talking. So it really doesn't make logical sense to bring him back. Back to New York, though, here inside of Designated Diamonds, we see the Yankees in a position right now where I'm not surprised. Going into the All-Star break, I said, listen, at some point this team's going to turn on. They're the Yankees. At some point, they're going to find life. And they made a bunch of trades, and obviously that helped to bring them some elevation at the most perfect of times, bring them a little bit of light inside of the tunnel. And the Yankees have found a way to move forward. I think it's it's interesting to me that the NL East was the closest division from like 1, 2, and 3 for, really everybody in the division at one point, even the Marlins, they were the worst team were the Marlins, and they were 9 to 9.5 games back out of first. And so to see the way that the Nationals and the Braves and the Mets, that whole division, how they've played between the Phillies, the Braves, the Mets, the Marlins, and the Nationals, they kept it close for a long time. And on the other side, in the AL and their East Division, it was close, but the Yankees were not doing what they needed to do. And if anything looked like, okay, maybe they're going to, and then they would fall. They just stayed back. And then all of a sudden they made the trades, they caught on, but they're still on the outside looking in at the time we're talking. If the wild card were to happen today, though, and we look at the teams that be making the playoffs overall, 3 of the 5 teams in the AL East would advance. Tampa, Toronto, and Boston would all advance, with the Yankees just outside of that. What are your thoughts on the New York Yankees and how they played the second half of the season? And what's your take on the AL East after the NL East was so closely contested? Now the AL East is looking at sending more than half of their division to the playoffs.
Well, I do want to touch on one thing real quick. What you said when you talked about the NL East and the fact that it was close for a long time. It was close for a long time because the Mets couldn't run away with it. I mean, let's be honest. They took the division lead, took a 3 or 4 game lead after May, and it pretty much stayed there.
Yeah.
They led the division for 2.5 months, 3 months. They never led by more than 5. And they didn't do it. But as for the Yankees and that division,
you were talking about the Mets, and you said that they couldn't run away with the division. I want to make sure that we get back to that point.
Yeah, and basically what I was saying was that they had every opportunity to run away with that division, with the Braves struggling, the Phillies struggling, the Nationals in a free fall, and they just didn't do it. I mean, they couldn't hit. DeGrom gets hurt. That's when things started to fall apart. And they held on for a while, but then the Braves got hot. They made a couple of pretty savvy moves at the deadline and got right in it and took the lead in the division. But I would give credit to Atlanta for even making moves at the deadline when they were 5 games out and really just getting back in it. They made the right moves.
Yeah.
I mean, to quote the late, great Herb Brooks, they weren't looking for the best players. They were looking for the right ones. And that's exactly what they were able to. Excuse me. But as for the American League East, looking at that division, from day one, you thought Boston was going to run away with it. They started off the season hot. They took a huge lead into May. All signs were pointing toward the Red Sox being the best team in the American League East. Toronto struggled a bit at the beginning of the year. The Yankees really struggled at the beginning of the year. And then there was the Rays, who were kind of on the outside looking in with the Red Sox. They were there, but weren't really competing that much, or as much as they could have been.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they get hot. They start scoring a bunch of runs, having some young, unknown pitchers come up and be great. Shane McClanahan, just to name one, has been outstanding for the Rays. And Luis Patino came up and was really good. So they did really well in constructing a good team, even after trading away Blake Snell, their former Cy Young Award winner, who arguably shouldn't have been taken out of Game 5 of the World Series or Game 6 of the World Series this past year. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the Rays. And then Toronto's a team that we'll talk about in a bit. But as for the Yankees, I was saying all year that the Yankees are a lot better than their record shows. And they weren't pitching well. They weren't hitting the ball as well as they normally do. I kept telling Yankee fans, like, just relax. They're fine. They're a lot better on paper than they are on the field right now. Then July rolls around. They make moves at the deadline. I'm sitting there a couple days before the deadline thinking, all right, Yankees are going to be in on Scherzer. Yankees are going to be in on just about any big-name pitcher you could think of that was on the market. They didn't get any of them. No. They didn't trade for – the only starting pitcher they traded for was Andrew Heaney. And that was like a meh kind of trade. That was kind of a trade where they wanted to get somebody so that the fans got excited, but they got a guy who was just kind of meh. But then they go get Joey Gallo, and they get Anthony Rizzo. Excuse me. But they go get those two guys, and it was electric to start. They win 13 games in a row at one point with Gallo and Rizzo and Stanton and Judge. Everyone's hitting. Even LeMahieu, who has had a down year, was starting to come back around. And then they hit a wall. Now they're not hitting anymore. Now their pitching is starting to struggle. I mean, the only consistent pitcher they've got in their rotation is Garrett Cole, and he left this last start early. Nestor Cortez is a guy who's kind of emerged as a solid starter for them. He's got a 2.85 ERA as a starter, an elite ground ball rate. I mean, he produces ground balls with the best of them, and he did that even when he was in the bullpen. But, I mean, for me, part of their issue was the fact that they did not address the rotation at the deadline. And as good as Garrett Cole is, people forget, after the foreign substance or the sticky substance crackdown back on June 3rd, Cole had 2 months where he was, I don't want to say bad, but he wasn't Garrett Cole, and he wasn't that good. ERA above 4 in those 2 months. Since the start of August, he's figured it out. He's been dominant again. The strikeout rate dropped a little bit because the spin rates did, but he had to kind of figure out how to pitch again. And that's exactly what he's done since the start of August. And he's been great. Nestor Cortez has been good for them. Jordan Montgomery's been pitching well for them. But after that, it's not much. I mean, they go bullpen games sometimes. That's the biggest issue that I see for this New York Yankees team right now. And, I mean, Luis Gil's been okay since he's come up and pitched for them. But they really only have one true good starter. And you've got Jordan Montgomery, who's okay, and Cortez, who really isn't even a starter.
Yeah.
That's not going to win you a series in the playoffs. I mean, the Dodgers proved last year that pitching wins championships. They did that with Kershaw, with Buehler. Those guys that just carried them. That dominant bullpen. And it's happening again this year. I mean, look at the Milwaukee Brewers. Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta. Sure, we'll talk a little bit about that later too. But that's where the Yankees are struggling right now. And I think that's probably what's going to hold them back. And if they miss the playoffs, that's why. Because they've really struggled since that 13-game winning streak.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I knew there would be an eventual day where they would turn on. And like you said, you told fans not to worry about it. But the question was, besides Garrett Cole, where's your pitching? And what you're essentially saying right now is that's still the question. And, you know, you can, obviously manufacture runs and make it happen. But until they say defense wins championships. I mean, obviously in any sport, and the way that you pitch and the way that you can shut somebody down, you don't want to be in a position where you're going to have to score 11 or 8 or 9 to win a game. You don't want to have to be in that type of world. And so the Yankees are in a place right now where they have a spark. They've had some life. They've turned on when they needed to, but they're still in a place where they're behind 3 other teams. And the Jays and the Sox are 9 games at the time we're talking, 9 games behind the Rays. Tampa Bay, people complain about Tropicana Field. People complain about the fact that
I can vouch for them. It sucks. The place sucks.
But, I mean, I've been there. Listen, I love the fact that I remember when we were driving and we were in Tampa because I love St. Pete's, and I was there with my mom and my dad, and we were driving. I was years and years ago. We were driving toward it, and I said, why is that stadium built like at an angle? And I just remember looking, and it looked like sand, and I just remember it looking like that. And I think the first thing that they had in there was the NCAA tournament, the men's tournament, like Final Four or something, and I think Duke was there. And then I got to cover the Rays and be there for that, which, was a great experience. And it was the first clubhouse I've ever been in when a team advances to the playoffs. It was the year they advanced first. And I got doused with beer and champagne. I was standing next to Joe Madden. So that was really cool. And it's also where I met a good friend of mine, Dukes Knutson. So there's a lot of good memories I have from Tropicana Field. But people complain about the field. They complain about the fact that when they get good players, they can't keep them because the guys don't want to stay there and they don't want to pay the money. However, here we are again, just like last year. The Rays had an opportunity to win the World Series, and now in a division that's been contested, and Boston's been at the top, and the Jays have been at the top, and the Rays have been at the top, and the Yankees have been, pushing and trying to get up there. Here's Tampa almost 10 games ahead late in the season. What is it about Tampa? Because their relevancy is there, and like their field or not, it's there. Like the fact that the Evan Longorias of the world move on and players come in and do well and then get big contracts somewhere else. They keep reloading, they keep finding a way, and they're still relevant in baseball in 2021.
I think part of the part of their success comes from their front office. I mean, look at some of the best executives in baseball. Chaim Bloom, general manager of the Red Sox, came from the Rays. Andrew Friedman, who many argue as being the best executive in baseball now, was the general manager of the Tampa Bay Rays. This is what they do. They breed executives because they are indebted to the analytics. Yeah. The Oakland A's may have invented Moneyball, but the Tampa Bay Rays have perfected it. They just find ways to win. They find players that teams don't think are that good, and they make them superstars. Randy Arozarena was a throw-in. I think it was the Jose Martinez trade. Yeah. Now, you might be asking yourself, who's Jose Martinez? He's in AAA for the Mets right now. That's about what they thought of him. But Randy Arozarena was a god in the playoffs last year. He's had a good year this year. Not a great year, but kind of came back down to earth a little bit. But he's a good player. They had guys in the bullpen. Nick Anderson was a cast-off. Peter, what the heck is his last name? Peter Fairbanks, another really good pitcher that people sleep on. Diego Castillo, not with them anymore, but still a good pitcher. They just know how to develop talent. I mean, now you got Wander Franco in the major leagues now. Wander Franco was the number one prospect in baseball for a reason. He struggled a bit when he first came up, but now he had a 36-game on-base streak. He passed Mickey Mantle for the longest such streak by a 20-year-old. I mean, Vidal Brujan has struggled a little bit in the minors. They got some really good prospects down there in Durham and at the other levels of the minor leagues. They just know how to develop talent, and they know how to run a baseball team. The model organization in baseball, in my opinion, is the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays, on the cheaper side for your small market teams that don't really have a lot of money, and then the Los Angeles Dodgers for the big market teams. I mean, you heard Steve Cohen when he first came in with the Mets was that he wanted to be East Coast Dodgers. Teams that are in smaller markets, the Indians, the Marlins, which we're starting to see, from them at least, the Twins, go out and be the Tampa Bay Rays. Find good executives. Invest a lot of money into the analytics. Granted, the analytics might have been what lost them Game 6 of the World Series last year with Blake Snell, but still, the analytics got them there. Just got to trust it, because these guys are a model organization. They know how to run a team. They know how to be successful. They know how to develop talent. That's what I love about the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they know how to do it, and they put themselves in a position where you know how to raise it, you know how to grow it, you know how to find it, raise it, grow it, and then eventually it leaves you. But the hope is that you can put yourself in a position to win something before that goes down and to get yourselves where you need to go. I mean, last year we were in a place where the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Tampa Bay Rays could have all won a championship in the same season. The Rays got close, the Bucks did it, and the Lightning did it. And now here we are again, and the football season's in full swing. Tom Brady's still a Buck, so they're relevant. The Tampa Bay Lightning are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, and the Rays are in first place of, the AL East. So, there's a lot of good things coming out of Tampa and a lot of positives here. But behind them, I know you talked about the fact that the Boston Red Sox, in your opinion, at the beginning of the season, were going to win this division. Now they're 9 games back with the Jays. Who's a better team right now? Is it Toronto or is it Boston, and why?
Toronto by a mile. And this kind of leads me into what I want to talk about next, because I am infatuated with this Toronto Blue Jays team. I loved them last year, and I love them this year. You've got arguably the best young player in the game in Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who is 1 home run away from having more home runs in a season than his father did. And his father was a second ballot Hall of Famer. Let's remember that. Everybody knows who Vladimir Guerrero was. Great baseball player. His son might be even better than him. And that's saying a lot. They've had a great season from Bo Bichette. They had an unbelievable bounce-back year from Marcus Semien. My goodness, has he figured out how to hit again. He's closing in on 40 home runs, closing on driving in 100 runs, scored 100 runs. I mean, the guy can hit, but now that he's in a lineup that he's protected, you got Vlad Jr., you got Bo Bichette, you've got Marcus Semien. I'm trying to run down through their lineup right now because they've got so many great players that are just dominating baseball. I mean, they brought George Springer in the offseason. Lourdes Gurriel's had a tough year, but he's starting to bounce back. Randall Grichuk's been good for them this year. Jake Lamb's been solid off the bench. They've gotten some good play behind the plate from Alejandro Kirk of late. But as many runs as they're scoring, let's not forget about their pitching.
Yeah.
Robbie Ray, and I got a whole spiel to talk about Robbie Ray, but I'll keep it brief here. Robbie Ray has been one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. And the only change he made was control. His walk rate last year, I got to find it. His walk rate last year was 17.9%, 10.3 for his career. He's a 6.3 walk rate this year. 43 walks this entire year. He had 45 in 51 innings last year. Just to put that in perspective. That's the only change he made. Nothing else. Pitch mix is the same. He's not really throwing any harder. Strikeouts are a little bit up, but not by a long shot.
Yeah.
Kind of want to save the Robbie Ray talk for later, but he's been great for them this year. Alek Manoah came up and was really good. They traded for Jose Berrios at the deadline. He's been good for them. So good that I just traded for him in one of my Dynasty Baseball fantasy leagues. So I'm hoping he continues to be good.
Yeah.
And ex-Met, Steven Matz, who had a great start to the year, hit a rough patch in the middle of the year, and now he's settled down. He's got an ERA right around 3.7. And then Hyunjin Ryu, who's been kind of the leader of this pitching staff. He was supposed to be the ace coming into the year. He's struggled a bit, got rocked in his last start, but he's been solid for them all year. They've got the pieces that can make a run. I'm telling you, this is probably going to be a wild card team. Look out for this team because Robbie Ray is going to pitch the wild card game. I'm assuming probably against the Yankees because I don't really see anybody else in the West outside of maybe the A's making a run for that second wild card spot. But he's going to dominate the Yankees, and then and then Berrios is going to start Game 1 of the division series against, I would assume, the Rays, and I think he's going to pitch well. I think they are a team that stacks up really well with the Rays, and they can beat them in a 5-game series. They have the pitching to do it. The only difference between them and the Rays right now is Toronto's got the pitching.
Yeah.
The Rays have the pitching, but they don't have the notable pitching.
Well, seeing this, the Rays and the Jays, for you, let's look at a decade ago in baseball. Did you see this? Did you see? I remember growing up as a kid, and Joe Carter was so good for the Blue Jays, and I remember I went to a game at now it's the Rogers Center, but what was the Sky Dome, and when I went to, and that's where the Raptors played before there's Air Canada Center, which is now Scotiabank, and when I went to go see them play, the Blue Jays play when I was a kid, right next to the Needle, I remember watching Joe Carter, and I believe he was playing the Twins, and I think they won like 11-2. The Twins weren't good back then. And I was a big Jays fan as a kid growing up. I liked Toronto teams. And so I was really, really excited to, see what they were back then. And then I felt like they were kind of like the little brother of the AL East. And Tampa Bay, I remember when my dad and I got shirts, the lady told us at the airport years and years ago, she's like, hey, you guys got to get this Tampa Bay Devil Rays stuff because they're going to drop the devil in the name. And my dad and I got it, and then, I don't know, like 10 years passed, and we were like, yeah, okay. This lady was just trying to sell T-shirts. And then they did drop it, and so I have this, like, history of a connection back to when they were building Tropicana Field and then buying that shirt, and then as a kid with the Toronto Blue Jays. And so now here we are. Did you see this a decade ago? Because, granted, the Rays have done some good things and brought in some good prospects, as we've talked about. But did you think that this division, the Yankees division, the Yankees Red Sox all day, every day, did you think that we'd be in a place where the Jays and the Rays could be fighting for the opportunity to go to a World Series?
Well, I think a decade is probably too long a time period to really,
let's say 5 years
into that. But yeah, I think 5 years is probably a good place to start, because that's where you started to see the Rays get really invested into the analytics. Andrew Friedman was still there. Chaim Bloom still behind the scenes. They're running a solid organization. I believe back in 2016, they were still fourth place team, but they were improving.
Yeah.
As for Toronto, they were a team that almost went to the World Series. Edwin Encarnacion, Jose Bautista, that team was really, really good. That was 2015. They brought in David Price, and they nearly beat the Royals. And honestly, if they would have gone to the World Series in 2015, I think there would probably be a Mets World Series championship banner behind me, because that was a much better matchup for them, looking back at it. At the time, I didn't think so, but hindsight is 20/20, as they say.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, I could have seen it from Toronto. The Rays, maybe, but I think the last 5 years is, if it's proven anything, it's that baseball is a very much year-to-year sport. Look at the Giants. They were in last place last year.
Yeah.
And now they have the best record in baseball.
And that's exactly where I wanted to go next, is this Giants team, the San Francisco Giants, who have overtaken the Dodgers. The Padres had some good moments this season, and now they're almost 20 games behind in the NL West. The Diamondbacks, my team, are firmly in last place, where they've spent all season, and the Colorado Rockies above the Diamondbacks. Dodgers at the beginning of the year, my prediction at the beginning of the year was Yankees-Dodgers, and I thought the Yankees could do it in 6. Dodgers is the easy pick for a lot of people around the country going into this season, that they would make it back to the World Series and that they would push for an opportunity to become repeat champions. Where are the Dodgers right now, and what can you say about how the Giants have not only found their way to lead the West of the National League, but to lead the nation, as you just mentioned, with being the best team record-wise in baseball?
I think the Dodgers are right where we expected them to be. Only problem is they have a team that's 2 games better than them right now.
Yeah.
A team that was in last place last year. It was in last place last year, and you don't expect them to be any good. I'm not going to lie to you. I had the Giants finishing in 4th place in that division this year. I mean, I had the Diamondbacks in last, but I had the Giants in 4th place. I mean, the Padres improved over the offseason. The Rockies were still a hit or miss, but I didn't think the Giants were going to be this good. I mean, they've had veteran after veteran just getting better and like having career years in their mid-30s. I mean, I'm looking up and down their roster, and I'm still seeing Buster Posey, who I believe got hurt last year. Or did he opt? He might have opted out, actually.
Yeah.
Brandon Belt. You got Wilmer Flores, ex-Met, playing
my dog
third
making
base
a debut. Apparently, she wants to hear your thoughts on the Giants and the Dodgers.
I guess so.
Go ahead.
But yeah, like you look around the team. I mean, Donovan Solano at the beginning of the year was starting at second base. Evan Longoria at third. Brandon Crawford having a career year at shortstop. They'd make the trade for Chris Bryant for next to nothing at the deadline. Just why we couldn't have done that for the Mets, I don't understand. But I think all these guys are having good years, but then you got to remember what the pitching staff looks like. Kevin Gausman has been great this year. He struggled a little bit in the last month or so, but he's starting to figure it out again. Yeah. Anthony DeSclafani, former Cincinnati Red, always been a solid pitcher for his career, but he's having a great year. He's having a career year. Alex Wood was really good before he went on the injured list. But then the one guy that really has jumped out at me has been Logan Webb, and he's a guy that I'd never heard of coming into this year. And he's been with the Giants for 3 years. He never had an ERA below 5.5. And now all of a sudden, 2.8 ERA, 132 strikeouts and 125 innings pitched.
Yeah.
He's been great. I've watched some of his starts. He's got some good stuff. He's a guy that I would expect to be a recognizable name in the next couple of years if he keeps at it, because he's been very good for them this year. I'm looking at this roster, and I don't know if you're looking at it right now or not, but I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking up and down this roster, and even still, and pardon my French, but how the hell are these guys so good? Honestly, I'm still trying to process it. I don't understand how this team is this good. I mean, I'm looking at the Giants website right now. They literally have resilient on the website. That's exactly what that team is resilient. They've won 92 games to date, and they're realistically keeping pace with the Dodgers. They're ahead of the Dodgers. The Dodgers are still the best team in baseball on paper, and they got better. Yeah. They got Trey Turner and Max Scherzer at the deadline. How is this team as good as it is? I'm still trying to process it. I really am, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and they're in a place right now where they can clinch and put themselves in a position where, and yeah, I'm on the site too, and with the word resilient. I mean, where did I think there's a lot of things we could see. I could flash things on the screen of where did they come from? The Goliath is, like David and Goliath. David is the Giants now. Like the Giant is not Goliath, the Giant is David. And so, I mean, resiliency makes sense. And this team is just in a place where they're trying to play spoiler. It's not that the Dodgers aren't good. It's not that the Dodgers aren't talented. It's not that the Dodgers can't make some hay in the playoffs, but it's that the Giants have something to say about this. And, I love that. And that's why when I saw the Mets doing well and you see this Giants team, it gets exciting because it puts us in a position where we're going to see teams that people didn't anticipate or expect to be there, you know. And I think with the Rays, as good as they are and have been in recent history, I think that they don't get, you know, the publicity and the love that they should, and the Jays don't. So, you know, I think this season, seeing how things can end up shaking out, it's going to be fun because, yeah, okay, we look at teams like the Astros, and that's expected, and the Brewers, you know, they're doing their thing, and, you know, the White Sox are clearly, I mean, there's nobody in the division with the Chicago White Sox of the AL Central that's less than 10 games behind. So everybody's double-digit games behind. So really, you know, seeing outside of the White Sox and the Houston Astros, Milwaukee Brewers, and the Dodgers being where they are right now, not in first, but still in, you know, the push for the playoffs, the teams that to get excited about is if the Mets could make a run with these Giants having made a run and being where they are right now, and the Rays and the Jays, and the fact that, you know, the American League could see 3 teams make it in, you know, in this East division of the 5 teams that are there. I think we're set up for an exciting postseason of baseball. And I think the Giants are one of the best things to happen because people were not just looking at the NL West division and saying, okay, well, the Dodgers can do some good things here. They were looking at the Dodgers saying, okay, here we go again. You know, it's hard for me to pick against them. I picked them in my World Series, but didn't have them winning at all. So, I mean, I think it's a nice balance of what people may have expected compared to coming literally out of left field and putting us in a position where there could be some teams here in the playoffs and some teams making a run in the playoffs that weren't anticipated. And what a beautiful thing that could be. And just to paint a picture, just for argument's sake, what if there was a World Series that was San Francisco Giants, Tampa Bay Rays? What would the country do then? You know what I mean? So
I don't think I'd believe you. I really don't think I would. And realistically, that's the 2 best teams in both leagues. It's the best teams in both leagues. And I wouldn't believe you. I really wouldn't. It's the middle of September, and I'm looking at these teams, and you can see, all right, who's going to make the playoffs, who's not, who's going to be the best team in baseball. I don't think the Giants are going to make it past the wild card round because they're going to play the Dodgers and Giants are going to play each other in the first round of the playoffs. That's a fact because whoever doesn't win the division is going to be the first wild card, and there's no doubt in my mind they're going to win the wild card game. If they lose the wild card game, then all hell's going to break loose.
Yeah.
But realistically, they will play each other. I would have the Dodgers moving on solely because of how good that team is. But like sfgiants.com states, Giants are resilient, if nothing else. And they just know how to win baseball games. They're doing the little things that a lot of teams don't do. They honestly remind me a lot of that 2015 They really do. And for whatever reason,
the 2015 who? You cut out for a second.
The 2015 Royals team.
Yeah.
The one that beat the Mets in the World Series. And I don't know what's going on, man. I got something stuck in my throat or something. This is very, very odd for one of these. I usually don't have that kind of an issue.
It's fine because the Giants got somebody. The Giants got somebody put something in your water when you started talking, like, hey, don't you be bad-mouthing us. Are you saying this stuff about us tonight? I did that one time we were talking about...
I don't know if they put something in here.
Yeah.
I mean, they put something in here that I don't know about? I don't know.
But we were talking about Prince. Rick Etienne and I were talking about music, and there was 3 times where I didn't say specifically, like, Prince was the best, or I didn't, like, promote Prince or, like, say something huge about him. And I had something fall in my studio 3 times. And the 3rd time, it was directly after. I didn't say Prince was like the greatest ever. And this thing just fell behind me. And so now it's like this running joke that I have to start off the show by saying Prince is one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, so you never know. You never know what the Giants did or did not do. You know, we all know that baseball seemingly always finds a new substance. So maybe somebody concocted something for you tonight to catch you up a little bit here when you're talking about how the Dodgers are better.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a fact. I mean, I love what the Giants are doing. I mean, it's this group of guys who most of them were there for all three of those World Series in the early part of the 2010s. But it's like they're all like banging back together for one more run. I mean, I believe Belt was there for all three. Posey was there for all three. Crawford was there for all three. Only thing they're missing is Bruce Bochy. But speaking of managers, how on earth is Gabe Kapler, of all people, leading this team to be the best team in baseball? How? Because he made some of the most boneheaded decisions as manager of the Phillies. He steps across he didn't have a dude warmed up in the bullpen when he was taking somebody out. I mean, come on. That's almost as bad as Mickey Callaway having the Mets bat out of order. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And this guy is the manager for the best team in baseball. It makes no sense to me. It really doesn't. But I don't know. This Giants team's been defying expectations all year.
Yeah.
Honestly, why stop now? I'm not going to pick them to make any kind of run in the postseason, but with my luck, they'll end up going to win the World Series. That's just my luck.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Here in Designated Diamonds, our inaugural episode, a product of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and Dan Tortora Broadcast Media from inside the Cafe Kubal Studios, Brendan Murphy and myself, Dan Tortora, first linked up with MU courtside and have continued since here as Brendan is working within Dan Tortora Broadcast Media and providing content for us, especially in the baseball world, and definitely excited to have this jump-off episode of Designated Diamonds. So, and with the logo and the music and everything we got to put here for you today. Final piece here is something that we're going to do in every broadcast. It's going to allow us to go around the country and even outside of the country. It's something that I'm calling Prospect Plate. And essentially, Brendan's going to serve us up a few prospects here every episode. So who's on the Prospect Plate today?
Well, I wanted to go a little outside the box because everybody knows the big names. Yeah, they all know Bobby Witt Jr. They all know Julio Rodriguez and Adley Rutschman. And I didn't want to really talk about those guys because we all know they're really good. We all know they're some of the best prospects in baseball and that they're going to probably come up within the next year or so and be superstars. So I picked out 5 names of guys who you might not know, but you should.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with one of those guys who's been a massive riser in people's ranks over the course of this year. And that is New York Yankees prospect Anthony Volpe.
Okay.
And he is a shortstop in their farm system. Good player. Like, coming into the year, you figured, all right, he's a good player. He was their first-round pick back in 2019. So you figure he's going to be pretty solid. 2019 rookie ball didn't go too well. I mean, in 34 games, he hit 215 with 2 home runs and 6 steals. That was about it. High on base, though. 349 on base. This year, 296, 25 home runs, 31 steals, on-base percentage of 424, slugging 610, 1034 OPS. Those are video game numbers. Those are Mike Trout-esque numbers. No, he will not be Mike Trout, but this guy shot right up prospect boards this year. And it's a guy I was able to take advantage of and get in both of my Dynasty baseball leagues where we carry 20 prospects on our teams. So the common theme here will be that I've got all 5 of these guys on, if not one, both of my teams, but at least one. The next guy we'll go to is a guy who was a first-round pick by the Rockies in 2020, and that's Zach Veen. He's a guy who's probably the highest-ranked prospect on this list, and he's been unbelievable in his first year of pro ball. Now, obviously, he didn't get to play last year because of COVID. There were no minor leagues. He spent time at the alternate site, and the Rockies liked him a lot. He's played in 101 games this year, batting .303 with 15 home runs and 36 steals. 402 on base, 509 slug, 911 OPS. Those are also really, really good numbers. Hitting the ball hard, hitting the ball to all fields, stealing bases. He's quick. He's going to play center field he's going to play right field, rather, for the Rockies in the future. I would say the not too distant future. He's only 19 years old, but he's dominating the minor leagues right now. Now, granted, he's in low A ball, but if he keeps this up, he'll fly through the minors. He really will. Next guy we're going to look at is a guy in the Texas Rangers farm system, and a guy that not very many people knew who he was, even in his draft year. And this is Dustin Harris, who's an 11th round pick in the 2019 draft out of St. Petersburg, Florida. He was a collegiate player, so he came out at 20 years old. He's 22 now. He played really well into 2019. For the year 2019, he hit .325, only hit 1 home run, stole 9 bases, hit for a lot of contact, no power though. 2020, on the shelf, you don't know really what to expect. And then in 106 games this year, he has 20 home runs and 25 steals. So, safe to say, it was a great offseason for Dustin Harris. He went out, he's got a .324 batting average, .402 on base, .544 slug for a .946 OPS. He's tearing the cover off the ball. Another guy I just picked up in one of my leagues. I have a claim on him for another one of my leagues tonight. By the time that this airs, I will probably already have him on my team. Fingers crossed. I sure hope so. Although in that league, I am competing for a title, so that is using one of my waiver claims for the week. So that's how highly I think of this guy. But great player. He is a corner infielder. He can play first or third. And he's a guy that made it up to high A this year. And he hit .370 in high A ball. That's where this guy is right now in high A ball. And he's been great. Shot up prospect list in the last month. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's got in the near future. The fourth name on my list is Shane Baz. He is a pitcher for the Rays. He will probably be up at some point in the next year. If he's not up by the end of next year, that'll just be a sin on the Rays' part. But he was a first-round pick by the Pirates back in 2017. Remember that he was a Pirates first-round pick because he was involved in what, for years, I have called the absolute worst trade in the history of baseball. When the Pittsburgh Pirates traded for Chris Archer from the Rays for Austin Meadows, All-Star, Tyler Glasnow, All-Star, and was in the running for Cy Young before he ended up needing Tommy John surgery. And this guy, Shane Baz, potential future All-Star. 2019, he was pretty good. 2.99 ERA in 17 starts. Nothing that's really going to jump off the page from you. He was a good pitcher. He was the third piece in that deal. Starts the year in Double-A. 2.48 ERA in 32 innings, 49 strikeouts. A whip under 1 at 0.735. Striking out 13 guys per 9 innings, which is really good. Not walking anybody. He had 2 walks in 32 innings. Gets called up to AAA in Durham. In 10 starts, 1.76 ERA in 46 innings, 64 strikeouts, 11 walks. It's a little higher walk rate, which was an issue for him. 2019, he had a walk rate of 4.1. pitched in the Arizona Fall League, had a walk rate of 6.5 per 9. 2018 in rookie ball had a 14.1 walk rate. I'm sorry, 7.7 walk rate. I was looking at hit rate for a second. Walk per 9. But he has really turned it on this year. He's got electric stuff. I expect him to be in the rotation for the Rays at some point in 2022. Heck, maybe even by the end of this year. They're getting to the point where they might need another body for the postseason in that rotation. That could be good for him. And lastly, I have a catcher by the name of MJ Melendez. And that's a name that some of you might recognize because he was once a very good prospect in the Royals system when he first got drafted. Kind of fell off people's radars for a bit as he only hit a $163 in 2019 with 9 home runs. But this year, he is hitting .279 with a .380 on base between AA and AAA in 108 games with a .621 slugging percentage, it's 1,000 OPS, 37 home runs. This is a guy in 2018 only hit 19 home runs in more plate appearances. 37 home runs. Now you might be asking yourself, all right, well, why is he not in the big leagues yet? Well, there's a guy by the name of Salvador Perez who's got over 40 home runs in just his second year back from a torn ACL. So I don't think MJ Melendez has anywhere that he can play at the big league level right now. But he has done just about all you could ask of a minor leaguer. So I don't expect him to be up this year because the Royals are out of it. But I would expect early next year ETA for MJ Melendez. He's a really good offensive catcher, solid defensively as well. And he's a guy that I would expect the Royals to maybe move around a little bit. Maybe they try to get him to first base. Although they got another really good prospect, a guy by the name of Nick Prada. Maybe we'll talk about him next time. But they have some really good prospects on the radar in that Royals system. And he's a guy that I would really look forward to watching in the next few years in the near future.
Prospect plate being served up to you from Brendan Murphy here on the inaugural episode of Designated Diamonds inside of Dan Tortora Broadcast Media, a product of Dan Tortora Broadcast Media and Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Brendan, as always, it's always my pleasure to be on the broadcast with you and hanging out with you, whatever we're talking about. And I'm really excited for Designated Diamonds, and I'm also excited to unveil this logo and be able to start putting some gear together so we can be wearing our Designated Diamonds apparel while we talk about baseball throughout the year.
For sure. It was a lot of fun, and can't wait for next week.
Looking forward to it.